Welcome to the Policyhawk news broadcast, coming to you live from America.
Also, we're floating.
Magic.
Technology.
Magical technology. This is James Toomey.
This is Billy Smith, and you're watching us.
Right. With the next election rapidly approaching, America's Republicans scramble to select a suitable candidate to challenge President Barack Obama in 2012.
The fight has been bitter, and the field has been narrowed down to 4 main candidates: Mitt Romney, Rick Santorum, Newt Gingrich, and Ron Paul.
Mitt Romney is a current frontrunner and has been for most of the race. Former governor of Massachusetts and CEO of the controversial Bain Capital, Romney represents the most moderate, traditional Republican of the bunch. He's been struggling with accusations of changing sides on several issues, several political missteps, and an overall lack of any real passion or charisma. With the most delegates already, it seems likely that he will take the nomination despite the small disadvantage that no one really likes him.
Rick Santorum, generally considered a long shot going into the voting, currently holds second place in number of delegates. The most socially conservative of the candidates, Santorum has won upset victories in several states, where voters chose him over the fact that his last name has several different meanings. Well known for his family values, anti-gay and pro-life positions, Santorum has a lot of appeal among socially conservative and strongly religious Republicans, though most analysts say he would not likely be able to garner much support amongst the general, more secular population.
Then we have Gingrich, angry bobblehead come to life and former Speaker of the House. Gingrich possesses, unlike the other candidates, the ability to sound like he actually knows what he is talking about, but has been dealing with issues such as his decidedly non-family values, and his proposal of some far-fetched but really awesome ideas, such as the promise to have built a base on the moon by the end of his second term.
And taking up the rear is Texas Congressman and everyone's whiny grandpa, Ron Paul. A perennial presidential candidate, Paul takes a stand as a very unorthodox Republican, running on a libertarian platform of free drugs, no taxes, and government so small we forget it's there. Though he hasn't managed to perform well in the primaries, he retains a small but loud base of support. Here's some footage from the last debates, stolen from CNN. I think we're allowed to do that.
Pretty sure.
Because he's a fake.
I'm real, Ron. I'm real.
Congratulations.
I'm real.
I didn't follow all of that, but I can tell you this. I would put a ban on earmarks. Our games are successful. But while I was fighting to save the Olympics, you were fighting to save the bridge to nowhere.
Representing the facts. You don't know what you're talking about. What happened in the earmark process, what happens in the earmark process, it was that members of Congress would ask, formally, publicly request these things, put them on paper, and have them allocated, and have them voted on in committee, have them voted on the floor of the Senate.
You did not once in the 2008 campaign, not once did anybody in the elite media ask why Barack Obama voted in favor of legalizing infanticide.
We've been rattling off some fun facts, but they don't mean much if you don't understand how the primary system works. Our very own Sophie Saknov is here to explain this complex and convoluted system.
The primary system is a way to nominate presidential candidates based upon the support of a state's delegates. In a primary, an individual can vote for a candidate within their own party. The candidate with the most votes wins that part of the election. Caucuses are less formal and open to the public. People attempt to sway others to support their candidate, and once again, a majority vote wins the election. At the National Party Convention, the candidate who obtained the most votes in the primaries is formally nominated. Because President Obama is eligible to run for a second term, the Democratic Party bypasses on the primary elections and formally gives Obama his second nomination.
Thank you, Ms. Saknov. Our interviewed reporters did a little informal polling of our own, taking out to the streets to find out who the school would vote for.
Of the Republican candidates or Obama, who would you vote for if the election were tomorrow?
I love you.
Mitt Romney. Romney.
Of the Republican candidates and Obama, if the election were tomorrow, who would you vote for? I would vote for Obama.
If the election were tomorrow, of the Republican candidates and Obama, who would you vote for?
I would vote for Obama. If the election were held tomorrow, out of the Republican candidates and President Obama, who would you vote for? That's even better. You could pick Obama.
Same. Is Vermin Supreme the fascist kind of say Republican candidate?
Where's Jack? Does probably vote for Ron Paul.
Mitt Romney. Obama. Mitt Romney. Definitely not Obama.
Well, it wouldn't matter who I'd vote for because my vote doesn't count anymore. And no one's does. Because the world is actually controlled by the Federal Reserve and all the bankers of the world. The International Bankers Fund, obviously. No one knows of this, but I do.
Moving on now to the international arena, there are two main stories that can be seen dominating the headlines: the Syrian uprising and the Iranian nuclear program.
We'll go first to the Syrian uprising. The Syrian revolution began last March as part of the Arab Spring protests affecting much of the region. Syrian dictator Bashar al-Assad refused to make the sweeping changes to his government demanded by the protesters and responded with the full force of his military, attacking and torturing civilians. This has been going on now for the better part of a year, and the conflict only seems to be getting worse.
CNN reports that as many as 2,000 protesters have been killed across the country over the past month, bringing the total death toll to slightly less than 9,000 within the same time frame. Several Western journalists have died while reporting after illegally sneaking into the country to report on the crisis. The United Nations has considered international action, but a resolution that would condemn the violence was vetoed in the Security Council, the only body with real power, by Russia and China. The UN General Assembly, the more inclusive, more democratic, and utterly powerless body, subsequently voted to condemn the violence. And a UN report recently accused the Syrian regime of gross human rights violations and crimes against humanity.
The brave efforts of journalists on the ground in Syria are not being ignored, however, as footage and images of the carnage emerges to the outside world. We have some here, and it is graphic, which is exactly why you should definitely watch it.
القصف يتواصل على حي بابا عمري المستبع 10 توالي من قوى كتاب الأسد الثلاثاء 21/2/2012 الله ونعم الوكيل حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل جلس على اليمين الله أكبر.
Let's just move on. Finally, we'll discuss the Iranian nuclear program.
Iran has long been pursuing what it claims is a peaceful nuclear program and what the rest of the world calls a lame attempt to vaporize Israel. The tensions have escalated, however, since the International Atomic Energy Agency concluded last November that Iran is indeed pursuing a nuclear bomb with their uranium. The West has responded by slapping even harsher sanctions down on the Ahmadinejad regime, and Israel is publicly considering targeted military strikes against Iranian nuclear facilities. Iran has threatened to respond with military force, specifically the forceful blockade of the Strait of Hormuz, through which 20% of the world's oil travels.
Our own Teddy Gold is on location reporting from the Strait of Hormuz. Teddy?
Here ye be in the Strait of Hormuz. There be 3,000 glorious vessels penetrating the beauty of this Strait of Hormuz. Ye are. It's a beauty one. Eh, Sally?